welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and this was supposed to be the second part of a prior video, but I ended up spending something like 28 minutes talking about the dying American dream, and so we're going to talk about this other article from Axios in this video on how the American dream, for some, is about leaving the United States. And so this is a topic that my viewers have wanted to hear more about because my viewers tend to be from the kind of laptop class where they could pick up and work anywhere in the world. I tend to track a more educated audience. And so I was talking to a data engineer about how it does seem like the American dream is declining and America itself is in terminal decline. And so as a data engineer, it's a good idea for them to potentially leave America. And myself, I consider myself a data scientist given my industrial and organizational psychology background. And so I did end up leaving the United States, and I do consulting and content creation abroad now. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart, given the current state of America. So let's see what this article from Axios has to say. So since leaving the United States, 2 married American expats told Axios they are aging in reverse. That's sad because America is a very stressful country to live in. There's a lot of hostility, gender hostility, men hating women, women hating men. I don't think people realize what they've evolutionarily adapted to be in terms of the gender situation, in terms of relationships. People are hostile towards each other. People don't have friendships anymore. There's no sense of community anymore. There's religious tension, ethnic tension. There's all kinds of hostility. More rich people against poorer people against rich people, although I think that's at least reasonable given the current exploitative system of America. So there's a lot of hostility, a lot of tension in America. People just do not get along. And so I can clearly understand why you would age in reverse if you move abroad. I do feel like I've aged in reverse since moving abroad as well. If you look at a few of my pictures from a few years ago, America's just not a nice country to live in. And that's not even getting into the economic situation where inflation is going up rapidly. People's wages are not going up as quickly. The cost of living just in general, it's outrageous. You can't afford an education. You can't afford to live. You can't afford to eat. It's a very stressful situation compared to something like Philippines where I'm living, which is something like 1/10 the cost of the United States. So let's see what this article has to say here. So for some, the American dream lies overseas. The big picture, as recent polling suggests, a dwindling sense of confidence in the American dream. Some U.S. citizens are flocking to foreign countries in search of more affordability and flexibility than they experience in the United States. Yeah, I absolutely love living in the Philippines. I told family members that I would never step foot in the United States again after moving here because there's just no point to it. Philippines is just a definitively better country to live in. And I get that a lot nowadays where if you talk to baby boomers, there's kind of this hostility because they recognize it's their choices that led to the current situation. And so it used to be the case whenever I would argue with baby boomers about the state of America and the terminal decline of America, they would just say, well, if you don't like it, just leave. Well, I ended up leaving America, and then I argued with a baby boomer family member of mine, and now her response was, instead of if you don't like it, just leave, it's now if you don't like it, just renounce your citizenship, which is a lot harder than it sounds because you have to find citizenship elsewhere. But it's just kind of funny that these people, the baby boomer generation, is just not able to take any responsibility for the situation in America, for what's been happening there. But I will say, as one of these expats, one of the people who left America, that it's a far better situation. And it's just propaganda that keeps you in America. The American dream does not exist anymore. The vast majority of Americans understand that. And even some Americans understand that the American dream never exists outside of the propaganda apparatus of America. So back to the article, it says, catch up quick. Recent surveys have uncovered concerns about the American dream declining or even already being extinguished. Axios' Dave Lawler reports, and I've talked about this in other videos, but if you look at trends between compensation and productivity, completely decoupled back in the 1970s, and it just took a while for people to wake up to that fact. And older generations never woke up to it because they're not understanding that the world they grew up in does not exist anymore in America. And so we can see that from the trends I was talking about, that productivity has increased over time since the 1970s especially. However, compensation has not gone up pretty much at all since the 1970s. So back to the article, it says Axios' Dave Lawler reports only 36% of respondents said the American dream, defined in this case that if you work hard, you'll get ahead, still held true per a Wall Street Journal poll from October. That's a steep drop from previous polling. Meanwhile, young Americans are struggling to get on the housing ladder, and Americans of all ages are increasingly pessimistic about the opportunities that will be available for the next generation, as one recent NBC poll found. At the same time, opportunities presented by remote work and expat life reflected in social media posts have led some Americans to consider life overseas. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. It's trying to wake up Westerners to what's happening in America. And really, for non-Westerners, I think my primary purpose is to show you that the America you see in media and entertainment is fictitious. It does not actually exist in reality. I can't tell you how many people since come here thought that the majority of Americans were like blondes with California accents just because that's all they've seen in media and entertainment. It really is strange just how, if you ask a person consciously, like, are movies true? Are TV shows true? They will say no, but they tend to believe that there's at least a kernel of truth to TV shows and movies. Even if they're entirely fictitious, they believe that there has to be a kernel of truth there somewhere. And they don't realize that these movie producers, these TV show producers, they could just outright lie about everything. And so that's essentially what's happening whenever they talk about America. And so I know a ton of people from, obviously, where I'm currently located in the Philippines. I've friends who were international students back when I was in the United States from places like South Korea, and they were just shocked that media and entertainment was not at all truthful for the reality of what America is. And so I would really encourage you to understand that humans have not had the chance to evolutionarily adapt to things like media and entertainment. Having our eyes and ears, having our senses lie to us, such as what happens with a television show, we can consciously recognize that. But our unconscious mind, I believe, tends to think there's at least some truth to what we're seeing. And so we integrate that into our worldview. And so for a lot of people, they're not able to see the difference between a TV or movie representation of America, which they've built over time, versus the actual America which exists. And so Westerners are coming to the realization, because they're living in it every moment, that the America that they see on TV and movies isn't the real America. A lot of Americans are waking up to that. But foreigners, I think my purpose is to show you that the America you see in televisions and movies, it truly does not exist. Okay. And so I'm hopefully taking the veil out from your eyes so you can see the world more clearly, because we are not evolutionarily adapted to not trust our senses, such as our sense of sight, which is what television and movies are manipulating. They're tricking us into believing that our sense of sight is truthful when it's actually a falsehood. Okay, so opportunities presented by remote work and expat life reflected in social media posts have led some Americans to consider life overseas. Since 2020, there has been a rise of the digital nomad visa per the Europe-based law firm Lexity. Dozens of countries now offer a visa pathway enabling remote workers to legally reside in the host country for a year plus under certain conditions, according to Lexity. I didn't have to do that. I met someone abroad and I ended up getting married. And so I'm going to be getting the marriage visa in the Philippines. And so I don't have to worry about that. But if you are living abroad, there are certain digital nomad visas that are being created specifically for you, because you bring in money to the country. And so they want to have a chance to get you to stay there for as long as they possibly can. So going on, it says across social media sites, including TikTok, some Americans are documenting their new lives outside the US while expressing shifting attitudes about the American dream. I should do this more. I should talk about this situation more. I wanted to be honest about what's happening in America, and part of that was I felt like I had to move abroad to do so because there's a lot of taboos in America, like a lot. If you're not cognizant of the taboos, you don't recognize just how pervasive it is. And so for me, I wanted to live a truthful life. And so I thought, in order to do that without being debanked, depersoned, without having my life threatened in various forms, I had to go abroad to do so. And I felt like that was a very good choice to do that before I decided to be honest about a lot of topics. And I think it's worked out, and hopefully I can open up the eyes of other Americans more effectively while I'm abroad than I could have while trying to circumvent taboos if I was still in America. So anyways, moving on with the article, it says JP Stonestreet and Amelia Basista, two married American expats who left Colorado to move to Ecuador in 2017, now run a business for helping people to live abroad and earn online income. What they're saying, we grew up in a country of opportunity for everybody. If you were smart and worked hard, you could achieve the American dream. And that is not the case anymore. Okay. And this is something that Stonestreet told Axios. So I cannot convey this to you enough. That is not a matter of opinion. We have metrics. We have measurables that show you the tangible reality of hard work does not necessarily lead to success in life. In fact, very frequently it does not, unless you kind of have luck on your side, which I, as I've talked about in other videos, feel like I have had luck on my side. There's been certain opportunities that have been available to me that I think other people who have worked just as hard did not have available to them. And so what this person is saying is objective reality. If you don't agree, you are wrong. So going on, it says it just takes one unforeseen incident to completely change that and take that dream away from you, said Stonestreet, who cited high living costs in the US as a major part of the couple's decision to leave. Again, I talked about that. That is objective reality. It's measurable. There's no arguing against this. Stonestreet and Basista said they have seen a large increase in the number of people both thinking about and making the decision to move. I've seen that just in the last, I've been here less than a year in the Philippines, and it's become very clear that more and more people are interested in moving abroad just in the last year alone. Most of their online followers are people nearing or at retirement who realize they cannot afford to live in the US anymore and are seeking a higher quality of life or a lower cost of living elsewhere. I am largely unsympathetic to the baby boomer generation because while most individuals in the world do not have the opportunity to change the situation in the United States, to change the government and policies of the United States, the baby boomer generation, by and large, made choices that had immediate benefits for themselves, but long-term consequences for Americans. And some of those baby boomers are still alive to face the realities, the repercussions of the bad decisions they made. And so I'm not as sympathetic to them having to move abroad as I am younger generations who recognize that no matter how much hard work they do, they're never going to really make it in America just because prior generations sacrificed their future. And I say this all the time because it's mind-boggling, but you have to recognize something. Throughout history, essentially every generation has sacrificed in order to make a better future for their offspring, for their descendants. The baby boomer generation is the only generation I've ever been able to find throughout all of history that not only took on the advantages that prior generations sacrificed to give them, but they also sacrificed future generations for their own benefit. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything since. It's a complete anomaly. I'm trying to puzzle out why it happened like that. I think it has something to do with media and entertainment. Things like televisions became more pervasive, and so the oligarchs were able to manipulate a generation to a far higher degree because, as I've talked about, people are not evolutionarily adapted to not trusting their senses in the way that television, things like that, would require. And so I don't know if that's the reason or if something else I'm not thinking of. Please leave a comment in the comment box below what your thoughts are on the matter. But the baby boomer generation definitively sacrificed their future, their descendants, in order to please themselves in the moment. It was shocking decision. I've never seen anything like it, like I said, but that's a situation that younger people find themselves in, where decisions made before their birth have led to an unsustainable situation for them. And I feel very sympathetic for the younger generations, any generation younger than baby boomer, really. So the article goes on to say, though the two became mired in medical, student loan, and credit card debt prior to leaving the United States, the pair is now debt-free since moving to Ecuador, both in their 50s. The two said they are aging in reverse, which they mostly attribute to reduced stress from living outside the toxic hamster wheel they refer to as the United States. Yeah, it is toxic in every way possible, between the daily grind because you can't meet your living expenses, to the hostility in terms of gender relations, ethnic relations, religious relations between people. It's not worth it in America. It really, truly is not worth living in America whatsoever. So of note, there's no data from a U.S. federal agency that explains the true extent of Americans leaving the states for life abroad. As of 2020, the State Department estimated that 9 million U.S. citizens lived overseas, but according to a department spokesperson, the agency no longer provides these estimates. Okay, so that should concern you. If they were keeping data up until 2020 and they stopped keeping data, there is a reason for that. Okay, the government keeps data on everything it possibly can. It never knows when it might need the information in the future. If it's either not keeping the data or not telling you about the data, that tells you that a ton of people are probably leaving. Like, that number spiked probably a lot. Like, I left the I knew I was going to leave the United States no matter what eventually, but I thought it would be sometime around 2030 instead of in the early 2020s. And I left earlier because the situation was deteriorating really a decade or more faster than I was expecting in America. Like, things were worse than I was expecting. I thought I was very pessimistic to begin with. And so I can't imagine what those numbers are now, but you have to imagine they're not good if they're refusing to tell you the numbers, right? So U.S. citizens are not required to register their travel with the department, and the spokesperson told Axios that the agency does not want to provide potentially inaccurate figures. So the article goes on and finishes with reality check. It remains the case that many more people are seeking to move to the United States than away from it, but for younger generations, America and the world beyond the U.S. has grown more easily accessible and perhaps more appealing. So I'm not going to get into it, but there are reasons people are going to the United States that are separate from the reasons people are leaving the United States, and that's really a whole nother video all on its own. But suffice to say, there are very good reasons to leave the United States, particularly if you have an eye for the long term, which is that the United States, as I've talked about in this video and other videos, is in terminal decline. So thanks for sticking with us for another video. If you found this to be helpful, informative, interesting, please give us a thumbs up. It does help us in the algorithm. Please leave us a comment below, questions, concerns, critiques. I do read all of them and I do respond when necessary. I appreciate all of that. And please subscribe to our channel on YouTube and Rumble. Rumble is not syncing our videos right now, which is a little bit weird. I don't know what's going on there, but if we ever get permanently banned from YouTube, we will move to Rumble. Tell a friend about our channel too. We are trying to get the word out there and make people aware of our channels, and word of mouth helps us, so we do appreciate you when you do things like that. Anyways, thanks again for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.